an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Season 1, Episode 6, My First Thanksgiving with Josh. In this episode, Paula is aggressively extra and gets Rebecca invited to Josh's family Thanksgiving. It doesn't go the way Paula thinks it's gonna go. I understood why she thought it would, but no. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Many thanks to Joakim Berg for commissioning this episode. I've been pretty excited at the clip that I'm going at when I'm covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. This episode, I got to watch a lot of it with Rashawn, and she is a big fan of this show, so that was pretty fun. And this episode is really it's a very Valencia heavy again, not in that every episode since we have found out that Valencia exists has concerned her a lot because she has not approved of Josh hanging out with Rebecca because she is just the figure that Rebecca is up against. But this is the first time that we've really seen her in the midst of everything again, the way that she was. And this is the first, episode that I have watched since she found out that Josh is attracted to her. And I expected her to be going a lot harder on the sexing herself up sort of thing than she is, because that would be my tack, right? But it turns out that Rebecca is sort of, I don't want to say content to just accept that for what it is, because that makes it sound like she's just sitting back on her laurels, and that's not it at all. But it seems more like she's approaching this as what I've been doing has been working, and I don't really need to ramp that up because now I know that it worked. He is attracted to me. I have accomplished that part. So I need to focus my energy on another area of getting him into my lair. Like she's some sort of Black Widow. So the episode starts off with her talking to the two guys who are running the boba tea place, Cup of Boba. And she is just really analyzing everything that Josh was saying. And he said very, very attracted. And she's trying to decipher how significant that actually is. And I have to say, if I had been her, and the guy that I was into used the words very, very attracted, I would be over the moon. I would really feel like that meant a lot. And then we find out it doesn't. Because when Josh walks up and he starts talking to her about, what he's doing, he's talking about there is very much traffic today. I went out over this weekend. It was very, very fun. He just says a lot. And she's realizing that she sort of has to shelve the idea that this is particularly meaningful. I disagree. Just because you use a word a lot doesn't mean that it doesn't mean anything to you. It's simply the word that you feel is best for describing whatever it is you're trying to get across. So I think her deciding that what she thought meant something actually doesn't isn't fair. I think it's just that he doesn't have a huge vocabulary for expressing himself, and that's the word that's the most comfortable for him, and that still means something. But I don't want to encourage this behavior, so I'm going to move on. So he tells her about all of the aunts and uncles that are coming to the Thanksgiving at his family's house, and he tells her every single town that they are from and goes into such detail. It is just, guys, have you met a person that does this? Have you met a person? This is a particular one for me. Owen and I were talking about this the other day. People who tell you in great detail how to get somewhere when you are a human being that uses GPS on their cell phone for everything. I don't need directions. I don't need you to tell me which left to take. I don't need you to even be like, at this time of day, there's usually a lot of traffic. As helpful as you may think that is, they can tell me that now if I need to worry about that. And it's one of those like old people talking points that gets so fucking tedious. My ex-husband's father would talk at length about which exit he was going to take to get somewhere and then just explain why. He would be like, well, you know, normally you'd take exit 65 to get to such and such's house, but they've actually added another exit. It's exit 65A, and that actually lets you off 2 blocks earlier. So you can take, and it's just like, I don't care. I'll put in the address and Google will tell me where to go. Not like GPS is always right, but that doesn't constitute a conversation. Telling people how to get somewhere or which exit they should take is not conversation, guys. This just reminded me of that. Him going, and then he like stops her as she's in the middle of answering his question so that he can continue to list off the names of different towns. Anyway, I just don't understand, other than the fact that he's like cute, what it is that draws her to Josh. It's just obsession. It's just this. I don't feel like in that moment, she's not charmed by him. She's not like, she seems a little irritated. And I wish that she could see that and realize that's who he is. It is kind of weird that he like even gets along with Valencia at all. But she says that she goes to the East Coast to Scarsdale with my mom. We watch the World Dog Awards. We roll some craisins and turkey slices, make little logs, and body shame some pumpkins. Or some puppies, sorry. Body shame pumpkins. And he says the most important thing is that you'll be with family where you belong. And she's sort of like, yeah, okay. And this is really a great bit that they bring back with her a lot, is how much a person who has sane, supportive, at least mostly, family does not understand what it is like to not have that and for your family to be toxic and dangerous to you. And I really love how much she is like grabbing onto this idea of Thanksgiving with a family. Like her idea of her obsession with Josh and being there to kind of outshine Valencia. Don't get me wrong. That is the main drive. But I really feel like, you know, she is an overachiever because she is somebody who longs to get approval. And being with a family like this and getting their approval is like really important to her. She's so much like me in that way, where getting the approval of authority figures has just been a thing throughout my entire life. I have always wanted to be the best. I always wanted the person who was in charge to recognize that I was the best and treat me like I was the best and tell everybody else that I was the best. And thus, the song for this episode, which is I Give Good Parent, is 100% me. I am, and it's one of those things that I think I surprise every guy that I date with it because of how I present myself when I'm dating. I tend to like revealing clothing. I dress in really bright colors and sort of like can do a lot, outlandish outfits or accessories or whatever. I swear a ton. I'm really politically aggressive with my opinions. Generally, I come across as somebody who is going to really not be a favorite with family because of how intense I can get and how just in your face I am about everything. But I know how to dial that back, and I know how to be a good guest. So for me, meeting parents is like weirdly entertaining because I enjoy the challenge of having to play a role And it's certainly not something that I love going forward, because after the first time, you've established who you are and you need to maintain that. But depending on how their family is, you can let yourself test the waters and see what they're cool with, or watch them closely and tell what they're cool with, and let yourself relax a little bit depending around them. So anyway, this whole thing of being the ideal daughter-in-law is like something that I'm pretty good at. And I have always managed to, I would find something that was really cute to wear, but modest and appropriate. She's got the pearls on and the little thing, like, yeah, precisely. It doesn't have to be that over the top, but generally that's fine. Being a little bit over the top is something that, like, a lot of parents appreciate if it's over the top modesty and conservativeness, bringing something to eat that is going to be liked by everybody, that works with the theme of the meal, and learning how to cook something that is not familiar to you, which is what she does. Extra points, 100% something that I would try to do. Like knowing how to make small talk. Now listen, guys, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Small talk is the worst fucking thing. It is so, so annoying and sad and like pointless. It's not pointless, but it's really a drain on energy that doesn't give a lot back. And that's the part that I find tough about it, is that I don't feel like the proportion of what I get back from it matches the energy that I have put towards it. However, I'm really, really good at small talk. I'm really good at it. Like, that's why whenever I'm in a job that has anything that's like facing customers, I'm the one that's put in front of customers. I just know how to make conversation, compliment people, ask questions that make them feel like you're interested in what they're talking about, and generally give us like your attention. I know how to do that. And that's really all it takes when you are meeting someone's parents, is show an interest in the things that they are pointing to that clearly interest them. They will show you exactly what their priorities are based on how their house is decorated, what they bring up to ask you about, because oftentimes they'll ask you about something that means something to them. So then you can turn that question around. Joking or, and learning the art of making a family-friendly joke that's still, pushing it a little bit. That sort of thing. It's good stuff. And she knows what she's doing, man. But I'm ahead of myself here. This whole thing where she doesn't like understand how he doesn't see that her relationship with her mother is not great. I am lucky in that most of my life, even though I wasn't like, I have a big family, but I don't tend to see them at holidays. But I've had a pretty decent relationship with the people that I saw most. Nevertheless, I have never been somebody who was like, family is everything. And that is not how I was raised. My mother's family were all sort of separated from one another and did not take an interest in each other's lives. They've only just started to reconnect over the past decade, and it has been very bumpy and fraught. My father's family has all been spread out due to, immigrating up here and some people not getting approved and others. And it's just the language barrier as well with my father's family has prevented me from connecting with them in any real way. And also, I think that the family is everything can often come from accepting help. How to put this? I find that a lot of people believe family is everything because they have had their family be a bit of a safety net for them when they've needed things. And I don't mean to say they're just using their family. That's not it. I'm just saying that when you are a person who has been able to fall back on family members when things have gone wrong, when there's been emergencies, if your family is financially stable enough to help you out in significant ways throughout your life, that is the sort of thing that leads you to understanding the importance of family as infrastructure, if for lack of a better word. And if you are not somebody who had that, my family has no money. They have like been able to offer bare minimum assistance, you know, like for example, when I left my husband, I was able to crash with my mom, that kind of thing. Super, super important. Yes. But beyond that, there was not a lot to be done. I am not somebody who has ever really felt like my family is a safety net that has got my back. Like I will always need to fight for myself. And I really feel like Rebecca is in this place, and it's different for her because her family has money, but she doesn't want to take it from them. She is not in a position where money is a problem for her. She doesn't have to worry right now, but there is a safety net emotionally that is also taken for granted by people a lot that she clearly does not have. And obviously, Josh does. Like, not only emotionally, but we saw that he couldn't find a job and he just got a job at his dad's radiology clinic, you know? Like, that is a significant thing that his father can offer him. Employment, you know? Employment that pays decently. That it's just a much different situation. And her trying to sort of blow off that, oh, I don't care about Thanksgiving, who cares? But you can see that she kind of does care and does want what he has in a way. And she sees when she turns around to wave to him, this couple that are like cooing over their baby. And she gets this moment of sort of, what's the word I want? This like longing look on her face at people who are getting this sort of community. And then there's another family that's all taking a big selfie together. And you can see like, there are episodes in which Rebecca constantly argues what her real motivation is. Oh, I just really want to be friends with him, when we all know that's not what it is. But this is an interesting one where her saying like she gets to be part of a Thanksgiving with a real family. That seems to genuinely be her motivation. She's telling the truth for like the first time on this show, you know? And I really kind of liked this for a change. Not that Rebecca never tells the truth, because a lot of episodes end with her finally telling the truth about something that she has sort of been denying or worrying about and just kind of like pushing under the rug. It's not like she always lies, but when it comes to things regarding Josh, she definitely does. And I was fascinated by the fact that she is, for once, really straightforward about the fact that she wants to be with this family, and it's not all about Josh. And I feel like that points to something pretty significant, and I'm wondering if the show is going to explore that, because I feel if you do come from a family that doesn't feel stable, that doesn't feel like you can depend on it, and you are dating, oftentimes what you are seeking when you date is the sense of family and tradition and stability that you didn't get from your own family. I speak from experience. And people who have had that their whole lives go into relationships expecting that, not hoping for it, not looking for it. They simply don't know that it can't be that it's not always going to be that way. So they go into relationships expecting it. And the difference in attitudes there can be pretty significant. With my ex, who fully expected a certain thing when we were in our relationship together, let me tell you, it didn't work out so great, because I wanted a thing and expected him to put forth effort to make it happen, whereas he thought that just happens and I don't need to put forth effort to make it so, which is actually not true. And so one of us was coasting along, unaware of all of the emotional labor that the other was doing, trying to make things work, while the person putting forth all the labor, in that case me, was increasingly resentful of the fact that it felt being used and not getting anything in response from the person who was accepting all that labor all the time. And that is yet another nail in the coffin between Rebecca and Josh. I don't think the two of them would go into a relationship with the same expectations. The only thing that I could see working out here is that she doesn't really have her own family, and being absorbed by his completely might be something that plays right into what she wants and is looking for. And that might be exactly right. But if you are absorbed by somebody else's family completely, and you don't have your own family, as welcoming as it can be at first, it starts to feel oppressive. There starts to be the expectation of things that you're not used to, and you can start to resent it. There's obviously going to be a difference between what someone who hasn't had that kind of family thinks it's like and what it's actually like. And the dysfunction is going to start to rear its head. And I would be very interested to see whether or not Rebecca long term would be as enthusiastic about Josh's family as she is right now. In concept and hypothetically, at the perfect time of year on a Thanksgiving day, does this seem ideal and where she wants to be and like she belongs here? Yeah. Is it going to seem like this, January, when we've just had Christmas and everybody's exhausted and they're still expecting you to come over for this and that every weekend, when they expect every spare bit of time that you have to be spent with them at family events? That's when it starts to get really stressful. And I wanted stability and tradition and the community of family, but I also wanted my own life as I had it in many ways. And that's not compatible, really. So anyway, I'm just like, I just see a lot of myself in certain aspects of Rebecca and what she gets invested in, what she cares about, the way that she sees the world, and the way that she decides to compensate about how she sees it or what she thinks she brings to the table, because she has a similar point of view where she feels like she needs to be bringing something to the table. Rebecca is somebody that measures her own worth by her usefulness, I think. And I fall into that trap completely. I mean, that's half of my battle in life, is that I overdo everything because I'm constantly trying to compensate for what I feel is taking from the world by giving back more than I take. And that's not exactly a healthy place to be a lot of the time. I think the world might be a better place if more people had an attitude like in that direction. But if everybody was like me, it would not be a good place. And I think that I fall into the trap of judging other people by those parameters as well. And that's not fair either. And I don't know. I really like her character, and I'm impressed as this show goes on how much of her feels so real, even when a lot of the tone of the show is campy and over the top and meant to be like really, sort of poking fun at itself or poking fun at a certain attitude. It's still really getting to the heart of where that comes from in a way that can be kind of painful. And they're very honest about that. So she's talking to Paula about Thanksgiving, and she says, would I like to go to the Chans? Would I like to be surrounded by the unconditional love of 100 Filipinos? Of course I would. And then we get the flash forward where they're talking to her about the library book story. And she's sitting in an armchair with a cardigan that has like a little doily over the top and her pearls. And all of these kids are gathered on the floor around her. And his family is in the background with their hand on her shoulder, smiling down at her. There's a painting of the Pope on the wall with the Madonna behind him. And I really want to know if that was actually in Josh's house. I don't remember if I saw it or not. But overall, this whole impression that she has of getting to be the center of attention and talking to these little children, it is really, really hilarious that this is what her ideal Thanksgiving looks like in her head. And Paula says, okay, let's put it this way. Say a giant boulder ran over Josh's girlfriend and she was out of the picture. How would you feel? And she says, I would feel terrible. A boulder would decimate her and her guts would be everywhere. And Paula's like, listen, you are getting in really close to Josh. All you need to do is get in there and you'd be fine. And Rebecca says, it's the holidays and people don't always get what they want. Now, super duper significant. Rebecca normally would be all over this fucking plan, right? Like, the fact that she is willing to just be like, look, it's the holidays. Sometimes things just suck, and walk away from it. That is a real signal that she is being run down a bit by what this all signifies. Sorry, I had to take a sip of tea. My mouth is like so dry. What I mean is, for people like me, who did have better emotional support than many, the holidays are a happy time. As much as they can be incredibly stressful, draining, they're also beautiful and joyful and something that I genuinely look forward to all year. But for many people, the holidays are a fucking drag. And you watch as the holidays get closer, you watch someone near you start to shut down. I have seen it with friends that had a bad time and they don't even seem to quite realize that's what's happening. They just sort of, what's the word I want? It's like an unconscious thing, you know? And this is what, for me, this is like proper use of the word triggered. Holidays can be very triggering. And I feel like that's 100% what we're seeing with Rebecca in this moment is just, she is not interested in things that normally she'd be all about because she is so emotionally distracted by the fact that this has always been a disappointment for her, that this has always been vaguely depressing and riddled with, like, you know, probably a lot of emotional scarring and things. It's just, I just feel really, the acting in that moment where she says, sometimes you just don't get what you want and walks away. She looks 100% in her eyes like she is over this conversation and just does not want to talk about it anymore. It's tough, you know? So we'll come back to that. Let's go to Greg. Greg is bartending and not having an awesome day. He got like a quarter tip from somebody, which really just, what are you doing? I'm in a sidebar here, guys. Can we all agree, as a society, as Americans, if you are American, that tipping culture is bullshit put in place by fat cat capitalists who don't want to pay a living wage, but also it's a fact of life and you need to fucking do it or else you're trash? Can we just agree on those two precepts? Because people try and act like, well, we shouldn't have to tip. You're right, you shouldn't. You know what we also shouldn't have to do? Fight for voting rights. But guess what? That doesn't mean that you don't do it. That doesn't mean that you don't vote because voting's like, no, this is how it is. And these are people who pay their bills on what you tip. So fucking tip, you son of a bitch. I have zero patience for people who try and argue that they don't need to tip because tipping is immoral. And you know what's immoral? Knowing that that's how somebody survives and refusing to deal with that reality. And people who do jobs where they get tipped, I mean, there can be certain professions where you make out like a fucking bandit. I've known servers who work in high-end restaurants who, on a really good Friday night, they'll make $400, you know, more than that. And that's one night's work. And that's awesome and do they also work their asses off? You fucking bet. Have you guys been servers? Like, you do 12-hour days, 5 days a week, and you deserve the fucking money, let me tell you. So anytime that I see a joke about how somebody's a bad tipper, I just get so enraged, because there's all these like different conversations that happen in different communities about whether or not tipping should really be expected. And I just don't want to hear it. If you can't afford to tip, you don't have the right to take advantage of the service. The end. Bye. Don't go out to eat if you can't afford it. That's all it is. Like, there are plenty of things that if you can't afford it, you are not allowed to do it. And going out to eat is one of them. You should go to a McDonald's if you can't afford to tip. Be done with it, you know? So, anyway, he is having a really hard time. It turns out that he is going to leave this job and go back to business school. And he is really excited to be leaving all of this bullshit behind. And he's also going to move out of the place that he shares with his dad. It is a big change. I am very curious, because he says, savor that, because that's the last drink I'm ever going to make you. I'm quitting this crappy job. And as soon as this shift ends, I can't wait to walk in and tell my boss to shove it, which he does, and it doesn't really work. I finally saved up enough money to move out and go to business school. Well, it turns out that money is going to go to paying for his dad. Guys, this is the shit that fucking apologists don't understand. I was gonna say boomers, but it's not just them. Anybody who acts like all you need to do is work hard and save up has no fucking concept of what the average person goes through. And this moment, he has saved up enough money to literally quit his job and go to business school. That's a significant amount of money. That's got to be in the tens of thousands of dollars kinds of range, right? I would imagine. You have money to both live on and pay tuition? That's not nothing. And yet, because we don't have fucking socialized medicine like every other goddamn developed country on the fucking planet, he has to sacrifice all of that money to pay some bullshit insurance company and also pay for the treatment, because the insurance he's paying for doesn't even cover the fucking treatment options that his father can access. And so he gets wiped out, has to go back to this garbage job, and doesn't get to do anything that he planned, even though he was super fucking careful about his money, obviously. This country's garbage. I hate it. This is a, like, really kind of small one-off bit of plot. Maybe it'll come up. I don't know. But this is the reality, and so many people don't even have this sort of savings to give up in the first place. They don't get the option of sacrificing something they care about. This is simply how they live. They live to pay the bills that they are accruing because of a medical condition they have no fucking control over. And they are working and going to the hospital and getting fucking chemo and then going back to work because they can't afford to miss work, because they need this job, because they need the insurance. It's disgusting and horrifying and incredibly pathetic that we allow it to continue to be the norm. You know, Owen's grandparents are, you know, they have always been in a pretty financially comfortable position. And they have recently accrued tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt because it turned out that his grandfather needed chemo and radiation. And so now they are in a position where they had been going to, you know, move to a new home. They had all of these plans, everything has been scrapped. And these are people who own a business and are of retirement age, and they cannot retire. They can't do it because of shit like this. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I love Greg's relationship with his father. I love his frustration, but that gives it a feeling of familiarity, but also the obvious appreciation that his father has for what Greg is doing. Because that's really the thing, is that I have seen people who give up everything, and it is simply an expectation that they do this. And that's a kind of a cultural thing, I think. It depends on how you were raised. People will have children with the express intent of taking advantage of the fact that that child will eventually be old enough to take care of them. That's what they do, is they have kids in order to ensure their own welfare later on in life, which I think is crazy. But okay, I think it's super selfish. But this is a guy who doesn't really want his son to do this. He sort of tells Greg, just let me die, dude. Just go ahead. I'm done. You have a life. And Greg is just shut up. No, I'm not, we're not even to talk this over. Of course I'm going to get you the treatment. And his dad tells him that he loves him. And it's a really sweet moment because he has to immediately undercut it with a joke about something. But you know that he's dead ass serious when he says this. He definitely does love him. And guys, it was so touching, to be honest. I really love the whole... I love when people are able to write a scene that can show intimacy within such a short amount of time. We've never met Greg's dad before this episode. The scenes with him, he doesn't have a whole lot of lines, but you still get such a great sense of who they are and their relationship to one another. And despite Greg being frustrated, because anybody would be bummed out at having to give up something they were excited about because of a cruel twist of fate like this, there's also a sense of once he has made the decision, it feels like he's kind of at peace in a way with it. I don't want to say that too flippantly because I feel like that can come across as me being oh, he doesn't care that he's had to give everything up, which is not true. And honestly, it's not fair because his father could be taking better care of himself and chooses not to do that. But, so that's one thing that I kind of hold against his dad is you're putting your kid in this position and you have control over whether you continue to smoke and drink and you're just doing it. And look what that's costing your son. So I don't love that. But I still do like the fact that they're, able to connect in this way. And he winds up there's this amazing scene where he's trying to tell his boss that this place is bullshit. I hate this job. I'm not getting the fuck out of here. And his boss undercuts all of his rage by congratulating him, telling him he's too good for this place. I'm so proud of you that you're going back. Everything that he tries to say to insult the guy, the dude is unexpectedly on his side already, and it's just really taken the wind out of his sails. And then he has to go back and get the job back. And he stupidly walks in on Thanksgiving. And it's I want my job back. And his boss hands him a rag and it's all right, get back here. You get your job back. It's fine. And then he tries to be well, I don't mean today. And he's yeah, you don't have seniority anymore. You left. You're basically a new hire. So you have to work when I tell you. You don't get to pick shifts. And the boss could give him a break and be all right, you get to keep your seniority. But I have to admit, if I were the boss, I would not allow him to keep his seniority. I don't feel like you get to walk out and just saunter back in and get back everything that you had before. I feel like that would really just not be okay with other staff. And you have to keep everyone's morale up and make it clear that there's a penalty for flipping me off and walking out, so I as much as I like sympathize with Greg having to be in this position, I didn't really feel like his boss was like out of line at all. But anyway, that scene, it's heartbreaking because I feel like it's going to lead to a lot of really terrible shifts that he's going to have to work. He's not going to get, you know, the lunch shift and get to go home in time for it. He's going to have to do nights almost always, right? Although if you work that job, doing nights is going to be the time you want to work because that's when everybody's out and tipping. So maybe during lunch is when he's going to wind up and he's not going to get the tips that he used to get. And he's going to be like struggling because of that. Megan's here. Says, my in-laws who are Filipino have an expectation we support them and their parents, which my parents think is strange. But when my grandma was sick, my mom moved heaven and earth to take care of her. After she died, my mom is still the primary caretaker of my step-grandpa, who didn't even raise her because they got married while my mom was in college. I think the situation is similar, just expressed differently. I really liked Greg in this episode because he's usually so cynical, and I wasn't expecting him to care for his dad like he did. Yeah, I think that's like part of what I mean about the intimacy is that they're really showing us a different side of Greg. I expected him to care the way that he did because you really get the sense that he is somebody who gives a shit. So I wasn't surprised by this, but I was surprised that we got to see it because this is not, other than Paula, we haven't really gotten a ton of like characters on their own doing their own thing. We got a little bit of Josh when he was like trying to get that job and, you know, got the application all screwed up because of Rebecca. We got some of that. So I guess like episodes kind of bounce around between which character we're going to get more of a look at. But I didn't really expect Greg to be one of those because of how badly everything went down between him and Rebecca. I thought that if we were going to get some sort of perspective like this for him, it would be a ways down the road when things had sort of simmered down between the two of them. I certainly didn't expect it to be basically like right after everything went down and she was trying to prove that she was a good person and everything because he just seemed so irritated with her. And this is a Rebecca-centric story. So I really didn't think that we were getting anything like this soon. But I'm curious how this is going to work out for him, and I would love it if Rebecca would like help him out, but of course she just like accidentally left $10,000 in this woman's trunk and it's gone forever, so maybe she doesn't have the savings that she used to have. And let's see, I'm jumping ahead. Okay, so let's go back to Paula, who sets up this whole fucking thing with the, what do you call it, meeting up with Josh's mom in the Asian grocery store because Paula brings Rebecca and doesn't tell her really where they are. And Rebecca doesn't pay much attention until she like runs into her and realizes exactly what it is that Paula is doing. And she introduces herself. And honestly, if I were Mrs. Chan, I don't know what I would think about what was going on here. She does remember Rebecca and that they had like their little romance. So that was good. Like if she hadn't remembered, it would have been pretty bad. But when she asked, how are you doing? Paula is right there cheerleading, saying, how's she doing? Harvard undergrad, Yale Law, 1550 SATs, winner NCAJ mock trial championships. Like, just completely reads off her fucking resume to Mrs. Chan, who says, that is impressive. And it's an amazing moment because you can tell that she simultaneously is impressed, but is also a little confused. What is this person doing here? Why are they touting you? The whole thing. In the end, though, Paula manages to get her to invite Rebecca to Thanksgiving. And this is one of those moments where Josh pretty much as a character has to be a dum-dum, or else there is no way he wouldn't see what's happening here. And, you know, it's kind of a shame because, like, I say it like that because it looks like, if you were on the outside, you would assume, of course, that Rebecca was the one who orchestrated this. And in fact, it was Paula on Rebecca's behalf, sure. But Rebecca had no idea what she was walking into here. But, like, I'm realizing that considering the way that Rebecca is going about trying to be part of Josh's life, the writers really had no option but to write him as sort of oblivious, because there is no way that you're talking to this girl that you just said you were attracted to, that you've been having like a whole conflict with your girlfriend about, telling her that you're having this big Thanksgiving. And then you find out she just happened to run into your mom, who just happened to invite her. There's no way that's a coincidence. Like, there's no way that you don't go, oh no, something's going on here. And I am very anxious about how long it's going to take for Josh to start putting the pieces together. Valencia already has. She knows perfectly well what the fuck. She sounds like a huge bitch and really like fucking irrational when she says it, but she's right. And this leads to the actual encounter at Thanksgiving, at which Rebecca has a weird like nanny cam in the owl brooch that she's wearing, that Paula is watching on her phone the whole time and basically giving advice like Cyrano de Bergerac, and telling her, not like, you know, I say that, but Rebecca can't hear what she's saying. She's just sort of, at one point Rebecca does call her, but most of it she's just watching and sort of cheering her up. And the whole like, I Give Good Parent song is really amazing to me. It's done in the style of like a Cardi B or a Nicki Minaj song, where she's got the really extreme costumes and wigs and whatnot. It's all very like over the top with the dancing and the backgrounds and everything. She's got a whole rap that she's doing, which is super hilarious to me. Got the Chan fan damp in their underpants at one point is a line that I just wish that I could totally not listen to ever and erase from my mind. I hate it so much. And Mrs. Chan is wearing a grill and a huge fur coat and has this like stack of necklaces around her neck at one point. It's really something, y'all. It's a lot. I'm just saying. It's pretty good. This might be one of my favorites, even though it's like, when I tried to explain it to Owen, because he missed the episode and I just said something about I Give Good Parent, he was just like, that's just grammatically incorrect. And I was like, who are you? Me? What the hell's going on here? But this whole like good hygiene written across her ass, like went to college and whatever, and then getting up in Valencia's face, it's good shit. I really enjoy this. So we see them at dinner, and the way that Josh is like, first of all, Valencia is 100% right about the fact that Josh doesn't even sit next to her. He sits next to Rebecca, which he tries to say, well, you know that I wanted to be near the turkey. Like, that's an excuse that he gives. And I honestly think he's telling the fucking truth. But it looks bad. It looks like he has left her behind. If I went to Owen's family Thanksgiving and he didn't sit with me, I would be really mad about it. I would just, there's nothing like being abandoned at someone else's family function. That it's just a rough one. I have had it happen, and it's not fun. And Rebecca and Mrs. Chan are having like this amazing book club conversation, and fucking Valencia tries to chime in with like, I would love to go to your book club. I actually just read a book. It's about journaling. Leah Michelle wrote it. Lots of blank pages. So basically it's a journal. It's really, really rough to watch, y'all. So Josh comes up to his mother and says, Ma, you promised to be nicer to Valencia this year. He's trying to run interference, but it's really too late because like Rebecca is so in there, and Valencia is so not doing a good job, like reading the room. There is a confrontation between Valencia and Rebecca in the kitchen where she says, I know what you're trying to do with Josh's parents, sucking up to them. And sure, parents may like you, but men, like Josh, love me. So you're out of your depth. You don't understand our relationship, and you don't understand Josh. We have history. We have chemistry. I loved Rebecca's response. Well, that's a lot of academic subjects. You think he's going to find you sexy when you're spending all day shopping with his mom for visors? Listen, it turns out that she isn't wrong. Having pressure from parents to pick one person over another, as much as it's good to make a great impression on parents, the more his mother tries to hint that he should really be dating Rebecca, depending on the frame of mind he's in, that may lead him to the opposite conclusion. So Rebecca, at the end of the day, after eating all of this food that she is not familiar with, she starts to need to use the bathroom really, really bad, and basically like runs to the bathroom and catches Valencia and Josh having a massive fight while she is in the bathroom right across the hall, or attached to that bedroom, actually, I think. And she, at first, is delighted. She can hear them fighting. She didn't even sit next to me. I can't believe that you didn't stick up for me. And she really thinks that she has figured this whole thing out. But then it sounds like they have stopped fighting, and she realizes that they are banging. And this is another good indicator of, like, when she says, you don't understand our relationship, you don't understand what we are to each other. Josh is a man and he likes me. Yeah, I mean, honestly, in the end, that's really like what it's about, whether or not he is into this girl. And as much as he may be attracted to Rebecca, there's clearly something between the two of them that keeps drawing them back together. If you can fuck like this right after a fight in your parents' house when everybody is around, you must have some chemistry. I mean, they've been together a long time and they're still doing it like this. That's significant. And he winds up asking her to move in with him in front of his whole family, which I have to admit, I think I had asked earlier whether or not they live together because I was so like confused at how long they've been dating and yet they're still not living together. But it turns out that, you know, this is a really big step that it sounds like he has never taken with anyone. And when he announces that this is what's going on, Valencia is really smug about it. And just everybody, his mother is really sad. We don't really see the reaction of his dad. His mother is really the one that we get to, like, you know, see her face and her yelling no right along with Rebecca. But I imagine that most of the family doesn't really like her either from the expressions on everyone's faces. So, that sucks. And at one point, Rebecca just bails, barely makes it home. Meanwhile, Paula is watching her, like, racing up the stairs, trying to get there in time, just manages to make it. And, Greg stops by without really announcing himself and basically tells her, like, I figure that I have earned the right to come by without announcing myself because of everything that we have been through. And Paula watches as the two of them have a charming and jokey evening with plenty of chemistry, like poking at one another, joking around, pillow fighting, yada, yada, yada. The whole thing is, you know, again, I've sort of said that I don't really ship the two of them because it's just such a weird dynamic to me of him being really desperate and her being really like, I am obviously in love with your friend, and the fact that you're willing to settle for somebody who's in love with somebody else is sad. But the moment where she says, here's a pillow, no one likes a hot butt, which is exactly the thing that he said to his dad, it's really, really adorable. And I feel like we have all had a moment like that with somebody that we aren't totally sure about doing or saying the exact thing that we need at the time and suddenly being like, oh shit. I had that with Owen a couple of times when we were first dating, of him just saying or doing the exact right thing. And I was just sitting there like, because I waited for Brennan to do or say the exact right thing, and I was disappointed 98% of the time. So to have somebody come in who got it right so often, I was genuinely like taken aback. And this ends with like Paula watching the two of them and being like, what are you doing? No, Josh, not Greg. And I don't know, Paula, is that right? Should it be Josh and not Greg? Josh seems like a bit of a dope. I'm just saying. So I'm going to wrap this up. My apologies to everybody who hung out with me. Oh, Megan says, I love this one so much. I listen to the explicit version a lot. Yeah, I'm curious about the explicit version. I'm sure somebody will share it. But I'm sorry that the video kept going out for this. I don't know what happened. But hopefully that won't happen for the next one, because I have Lyriel coming up in a half an hour or so. But thank you all very much for hanging out. And I will be seeing you soon with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.